The words cut deeper than I ever thought words could. "You're getting too heavy, Clara," Derek said, his voice casual, almost flippant, as he leaned back in his sleek office chair. We were in his apartment, the one he was so proud of, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's glittering skyline. I sat across from him, my hands folded in my lap, feeling the weight of his gaze as it lingered on my body. I wasn't the slim, carefree college girl he'd met 3 years ago. Life had layered me with stress, late-night snacks, and a sedentary job that left little time for the gym. But I hadn't expected my fiancé partner to weaponize that against me. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of ordinary night that shouldn't have been memorable. We'd been discussing wedding plans, or at least I had, flipping through a binder of fabric swatches and venue photos. Derek, as usual, seemed distracted, his eyes flicking to his phone every few minutes. Then, out of nowhere, he'd said it. "You're getting too heavy, Clara. You need to do something about it before the wedding. I mean, you want to look good in the photos, right?" He laughed, as if it were a joke, but the sound was hollow, and his eyes didn't meet mine. I froze, my fingers tightening around the binder. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. "What?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. He shrugged, still not looking at me. "Just being honest. You've let yourself go a bit. It's not a big deal. But, you could try harder." Try harder. The words echoed in my mind, each syllable a tiny dagger. I wanted to scream, to demand how he could say something so cruel so carelessly. But instead, I sat there, stunned into silence. Derek didn't notice. He was already scrolling through his phone again, oblivious to the storm he'd unleashed inside me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my own apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words. I thought about the years we'd spent together to late-night talks, the shared dreams, the proposal under a canopy of stars last summer. I'd thought we were building something unbreakable. But now, I saw cracks I hadn't noticed before, his subtle comments about my eating habits, his insistence that I wear certain clothes to flatter my figure, his growing distance as my waistline expanded. Had he always felt this way? Had I been blind? The next morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, studying myself. At 28, I was no model, but I wasn't unhealthy either. My curves were fuller than they'd been in college, my hips softer, my face rounder. I wasn't ashamed of my body not until Derek's words had planted that seed. But as I looked into my own eyes, something shifted. I wasn't going to let his cruelty define me. If he thought I needed to try harder, I'd show him just how hard I could try, not for him, but for myself. I started small. I signed up for a gym membership that same day. Not because I wanted to be his version of perfect, but because I wanted to feel strong again. The first few sessions were brutal. My lungs burned. My muscles ached, and I felt like an imposter among the toned regulars. But I kept going. I found a trainer, a kind woman named Maya who saw my determination and didn't push me to be someone else. "This is about you, Clara," she said. "Not anyone else." Her words became my mantra. I also started therapy. I hadn't realized how much Derek's comment had shaken my sense of self until I sat across from Dr. Ellis, a gentle older woman who listened without judgment. She helped me unpack the hurt, the anger, the insecurity. "You're not just carrying physical weight," she said during one session. "You're carrying his expectations, too. Let them go." It wasn't easy, but I began to see that my worth wasn't tied to Derek's approval or anyone's. Work became my refuge. I was a junior marketing analyst at a mid-sized tech firm, a job I'd always enjoyed but never fully invested in. Now, I threw myself into it. I volunteered for extra projects, stayed late to refine campaigns, and started pitching ideas in meetings. My boss, Sarah, noticed. "You're on fire, Clara," she said one day, her eyes gleaming with approval. "Keep this up, and you'll be running this department someday." Her words lit a spark in me. I wasn't just Clara, the woman who'd been mocked by her fiancé. I was Clara, the woman who could build something extraordinary. 6 weeks after Derek's comment, I was already feeling different, stronger, more focused. I'd lost a few pounds, but more importantly, I'd gained clarity. I started to notice things about Derek I'd ignored before: his obsession with appearances, his need to control how others perceived him, his subtle dismissals of my ambitions. He worked at a rival tech firm, a flashy startup led by a charismatic CEO named Ethan Caldwell. Derek idolized Ethan, always talking about his charm, his wealth, his influence. It was exhausting, and I began to wonder why I'd ever thought we were a good match. One evening, as I was leaving the gym, my phone buzzed with a text from Derek: "Dinner tomorrow. Need to talk wedding stuff." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. For the first time, I didn't feel the usual rush to respond. Instead, I felt a quiet resolve. I typed, "Sure, let's talk." But in my heart, I knew it wasn't just about the wedding. It was about using whether us was worth saving. Dinner with Derek was a revelation, not because of what he said, but because of what I saw. We met at a trendy restaurant downtown, the kind of place where the lighting was dim and the prices were high. Derek was already there when I arrived, dressed in his usual tailored blazer, his hair meticulously styled. He smiled when he saw me, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You look different," he said, his gaze sweeping over me. I was wearing a new dress, one I'd bought because it made me feel confident, not because it fit his idea of flattering. "Thanks," I said simply, sitting down. I didn't elaborate, and he didn't ask. Instead, he launched into a monologue about his latest project at work, something about impressing Ethan Caldwell. I listened, but my mind was elsewhere. I noticed how he barely asked about my day, how he interrupted when I tried to share my own successes. It was a pattern I'd ignored for years, but now it was glaringly obvious. "Clara, about the wedding," he said eventually, swirling his wine glass. "We need to lock in the venue soon. And, you know, keep working on you." He gestured vaguely at my body, his tone light but pointed. "You're doing better, but there's still time to really shine." I set my fork down, my appetite gone. "What does that mean, Derek?" My voice was calm, but inside, I was seething. He blinked, caught off guard. "I just mean, you know, the photos, the dress. You want to look your best, right?" I leaned forward, holding his gaze. "And what if I already feel my best? What if I'm happy with who I am right now?" He laughed, a nervous sound. "Come on, Clara, don't be so sensitive. I'm just trying to help." That word "help" snapped something inside me. "Help," I repeated. "You think mocking my weight is helping? You think making me feel small is helping?" The restaurant seemed to quiet around us, though I knew it was just my focus narrowing. Derek's face flushed. "I didn't mock you," he said, lowering his voice. "I was being honest. You're blowing this out of proportion." I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "No, Derek. I'm seeing things clearly for the first time. We're done." His jaw dropped, but I didn't wait for a response. I walked out, my heart pounding but lighter than it had been in months. The city lights blurred as I strode down the street. Not because I was crying, but because I was free. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Breaking off the engagement was both terrifying and liberating. I moved out of the apartment we'd shared, renting a small but cozy place of my own. I threw myself into my work, my workouts, my therapy sessions. Maya, my trainer, became a friend, cheering me on as I lifted heavier weights and ran longer distances. Dr. Ellis helped me navigate the guilt and doubt that crept in, reminding me that choosing myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. At work, my efforts were paying off. Sarah promoted me to lead a new marketing campaign for a major client, a project that would put our firm on the map. The client was none other than Ethan Caldwell's company, a fact that made me smile wryly. Derek would be furious if he knew. I didn't care. This was my moment, not his. The campaign required long hours and creative risks, but I thrived on it. I collaborated with a talented team, including a graphic designer named Lena, who became my confidant. "You're glowing," she said one day as we brainstormed over coffee. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." I laughed, but I knew she was right. I was becoming someone new, not just physically, but in every way that mattered. One afternoon, Sarah called me into her office. "Clara, I've got an opportunity for you," she said, her eyes bright. "Ethan Caldwell is hosting a gala next month to celebrate his company's latest product launch. We're invited, and I want you to represent us. You'll present our campaign to him and his team." My heart skipped a beat. Ethan Caldwell, the man Derek worshipped, the man whose approval Derek craved more than mine. "I'm in," I said, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. As I left Sarah's office, I felt a surge of determination. This was more than a work opportunity. It was a chance to prove something to Derek, to myself, to the world. I didn't know what the gala would bring, but I knew one thing for certain: I was ready. The weeks leading up to the gala were a blur of preparation. At work, I fine-tuned the campaign, obsessing over every detail. Lena and I spent late nights tweaking visuals, perfecting taglines, and rehearsing my presentation. At the gym, I pushed myself harder, not to lose weight, but to build strength. I wanted to walk into that gala feeling unshakable. Maya noticed the shift. "You're not just training your body," she said one day, wiping sweat from her brow. "You're training your mind." Therapy with Dr. Ellis was my anchor. I talked through my fear of seeing Derek at the gala, fear of failing in front of Ethan Caldwell, fear that I wasn't enough. "You are enough," Dr. Ellis said firmly. "You've always been enough." Derek's words don't change that. Her words stayed with me, a quiet strength I carried into every challenge. I also started to reclaim parts of myself I'd neglected. I bought clothes that made me feel powerful, not just flattering. I experimented with makeup, finding shades that highlighted my features rather than hiding them. I even cut my high-rise sleek bob that framed my face and made me feel like a new woman. Lena, ever the artist, helped me pick out a dress for the gala, emerald green, flowing but fitted, with a neckline that showed off my collarbone and a hem that swirled when I moved. "You're going to stop hearts in this," she said, grinning. I hoped she was right. The night of the gala arrived, a crisp autumn evening that made the city feel alive. I stood in front of my mirror, smoothing the dress over my hips. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me because I'd lost weight, though I had, a natural byproduct of my new habits, but because of the fire in her eyes. This was Clara, unapologetic and unafraid. The gala was held at a grand hotel downtown, its ballroom glittering with chandeliers and filled with the hum of conversation. I arrived alone, my heels clicking against the marble floor as I handed my coat to an attendant. I scanned the room, half expecting to see Derek, but there was no sign of him. Instead, I saw Sarah waving me over, her face beaming with pride. "You look incredible," she whispered as I joined her. "Go make us proud." I mingled with the crowd, exchanging small talk with industry leaders and sipping sparkling water to steady my nerves. Then I saw him, Ethan Caldwell. He was taller than I'd expected, with sharp features softened by a warm smile. His presence commanded the room, but not in an intimidating way. He moved with an easy confidence, shaking hands and laughing with guests. When Sarah introduced us, his handshake was firm, his eyes curious. "Clara, right?" he said. "I've heard good things about your work." "Thank you," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I'm excited to share our campaign with you." We talked briefly, but the real moment came later. During my presentation, the room was packed. The lights dimmed as I took the stage. I could feel every eye on me, but I didn't falter. I spoke with conviction, outlining our vision for Ethan's company, weaving data with storytelling in a way that felt natural. When I finished, the applause was warm, genuine. Ethan approached me afterward, his expression impressed. "That was outstanding, Clara," he said. "Let's talk more. Join me for a drink." I hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that." As we walked to the bar, I felt a prickle on the back of my neck. I turned, and there he was, Derek, standing across the room, his face a mask of shock. He was with a group of colleagues, but his eyes were locked on me. For a moment, our gazes met, and I saw something flicker in his expression: regret, maybe, or disbelief. I didn't care. I turned back to Ethan, smiling, and followed him to the bar. Ethan was different from what I'd expected. Based on Derek's endless praise, I'd pictured a cold, calculating mogul, but the man beside me at the bar was warm, attentive, even a little self-deprecating. He asked about my work, my ideas, my passions, not just as a courtesy, but with genuine interest. "You have a knack for seeing the big picture," he said, leaning closer to be heard over the music. "That's rare." I laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "I've had a lot of time to practice looking at things differently lately." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued, but didn't press. Instead, he shared stories of his own, how he'd built his company from a garage startup, the failures he'd overcome, the people who doubted him. I found myself relaxing, the weight of the evening lifting. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Derek or the pain he'd caused. I was just present. As we talked, I caught glimpses of Derek across the room. He was trying to network, his usual charm on display, but his eyes kept darting toward us. I could feel his unease, and part of meth part that still stung from his words took quiet satisfaction in it. But mostly, I was focused on Ethan, on the way his laughter made me feel lighter, on the way he listened like my words mattered. When Ethan offered to walk me to my car at the end of the night, I accepted. The air outside was cool, the city quiet compared to the buzz of the gala. "I'd like to work with you more closely," he said as we reached my car. "Your campaign, it's bold, but it's smart. I think we could do great things together." My heart raced, but not just because of the professional opportunity. There was something in his tone, a warmth that felt personal. "I'd like that," I said, meeting his gaze. "Let's make it happen." He smiled, holding my door open as I slid into the driver's seat. "Good night, Clara. Drive safe." As I drove home, my mind was a whirlwind. The gala had been a triumph, not just for my career, but for me. I'd walked into that room on my own terms. And I'd left with something more a spark of possibility. A sense of who I could become. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Can we talk? I saw you last night. You looked, wow. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. A few months ago, I might have felt validated, even tempted to respond. But now, I deleted the text without replying. Derek didn't get to claim credit for my transformation. This was mine. Work became even more intense after the gala. Ethan's team greenlit our campaign, and I was assigned to lead the collaboration. It meant long hours, frequent meetings, and occasional late-night brainstorming sessions with Ethan himself. He was professional but warm, always making time to check in on Minute just as a colleague. But as a person, you're carrying a lot, he said one evening, as we sat in his office with takeout containers scattered across the desk. Don't burn out. Okay. I smiled, touched by his concern. I'm okay. Better than okay. Actually. He studied me, his eyes searching. Good. You deserve that. Over the next few weeks, our professional relationship deepened into something more. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic confessions, just small moments that added up. A shared laugh over coffee, a lingering glance during a meeting, a quiet conversation about dreams and fears. I wasn't sure what it meant, but I knew it felt right. As the project with Ethan's company progressed, so did my confidence. I was no longer the woman who'd sat silently while her fiancé tore her down. I was leading meetings, pitching ideas, and earning respect from people I'd once admired from afar. Lena, my graphic designer friend, teased me about my glow-up, but it wasn't just about my appearance. It was about the way I carried myself, the way I believed in my own worth. Ethan and I grew closer, our connection undeniable but unspoken. We worked late nights together, our conversations drifting from marketing strategies to personal dreams. He told me about his childhood, growing up with a single mother who'd sacrificed everything for him. I shared my journey, though I left out the specifics of Derek's cruelty. Ethan didn't need to know the details to understand that I'd been hurt. You're stronger than you realize, he said one night, his voice soft. I see it every day. I blushed, looking down at my notebook. I'm just trying to keep up with you. He laughed, but there was something tender in his eyes. You're doing more than keeping up, Clara. You're leading. Meanwhile, Derek kept texting. His messages grew more desperate, alternating between apologies and attempts to rekindle what we'd had. I messed up, Clara. I didn't mean it. You're incredible. I didn't respond. His words no longer had power over me. I'd spent too long letting his voice drown out my own. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I ran into Derek in the lobby. He must have been waiting for me, because he stepped forward the moment he saw me, his face a mix of nerves and determination. Clara, please, he said, his voice low. Just hear me out. I stopped, crossing my arms. What do you want? Derek. I was wrong, he said, his eyes pleading. I shouldn't have said what I did. I was stressed. I was stupid. You're amazing. I see that now. I studied him, the man I'd once thought I'd spend my life with. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by his own choices. You didn't see me then, I said quietly. And I don't need you to see me now. I see myself. His face fell, but I didn't wait for a response. I walked past him, my head high, and didn't look back. That night, Ethan invited me to dinner, not a work dinner, but a real one. We went to a quiet Italian restaurant, the kind of place where the candles flickered and the wine flowed. For the first time, we didn't talk about work. We talked about life, our hopes, our fears, the people we wanted to be. When he reached for my hand across the table, I didn't pull away. His touch was warm, steady, and it felt like a promise. "Clara," he said, his voice low. "I don't know what's happening here, but I know I want to find out." I smiled, my heart full. Me too. 6 months after Derek's cruel words, I stood in front of a new mirror, in a new dress, preparing for another gala. This one was different, not a work event, but a celebration of Ethan's company hitting a major milestone. He'd asked me to be his date, and I'd said yes without hesitation. The dress was a deep sapphire blue, elegant and bold, a reflection of the woman I'd become. Lena had helped me pick it out, her eyes sparkling as she declared, "This is you, Clara. All of you." As I walked into the gala on Ethan's arm, the room seemed to pause. I felt every eye on us. But this time, it didn't make me nervous. I felt strong, radiant, alive. Ethan leaned down, whispering, "You're stealing the show." I laughed, squeezing his arm, and for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Then I saw Derek. He was there, of course, part of Ethan's team, standing near the edge of the room. His face was a storm of emotion: shock, regret, envy. I didn't care. I wasn't here for him. I was here for me, for Ethan, for the life I was building. The night was a blur of laughter, dancing, and celebration. Ethan introduced me to his colleagues, not as a marketing analyst, but as Clara, the woman who's changing the game. His pride in me was palpable, and it filled me with a warmth I hadn't known I could feel. As the evening wound down, Ethan pulled me onto the dance floor. The music was slow, intimate, and he held me close. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice soft against my ear. "Not just for tonight, but for everything. You're incredible." I looked up at him, my heart swelling. "Thank you," I said, "for seeing me." He smiled, brushing a thumb across my cheek. "I've always seen you, Clara, and I'm not going anywhere." As we danced, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Derek's words had been a catalyst, a painful spark that ignited my transformation. But this wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about proving myself right. I'd learned to love the woman I was, curves and all, and to demand respect not just from others, but from myself. The gala ended with a toast, Ethan raising a glass to his team, his vision, and the future. I raised my glass too, not just to his company, but to mine, to the woman who'd walked through fire and come out stronger, to the woman who'd chosen herself, and in doing so, found something even better. As we left the gala, Ethan's hand in mine, I glanced back one last time. Derek was watching, but I didn't linger. The past was behind me, and the future was wide open. I stepped into it, unafraid, ready for whatever came next.